Welcome to the Rundown. I have rebranded the show from Pardon the Corruption, which was a spinoff of the ESPN show. It never really felt right. Pardon the Corruption. It was supposed to be Pardon the Interruption. So I've gone with the Rundown because there are a list of topics that we have to go through and we'll run them down. So that seemed a little bit simpler. My guest today is Nigel. Hey, man, what's going on?
Good, buddy. Thank you very much, by the way. It's an honor to be here with the godfather of Raptors blogging, the guy who started it all. I was reading your articles years and years before I even thought about writing. So thank you very much for everything you've done here, my friend. You've made me who I am.
Thanks for the very very kind words. And
no,
I'm
not so kind.
Entirely true, but I'll take it.
It's true, my friend.
This is a show where we have 7 or 8 topics identified, and you can see them on your screen there on the right side or on the left side. It'll depend on where I put it in the edit. But we'll start off with the Poeltl effect, which is all the rage these days. Jakob Poeltl, the Raptors pull the trade. They finally get a big man in here. So what is your first observation? Like, what are your initial observations on how the team, play has changed because of Poeltl? We'll talk about his sort of impact to maybe the confidence of the team, but just purely from a basketball sense. Like, what has he brought to the Raptors that has made them, frankly, much more watchable than they were a month ago?
Oh, yeah. 100%. His impact has been mind-blowing, to be honest with you. I was not expecting this much of a jump. I was expecting a jump. I really thought having a center would change a lot of things. But offensively and defensively, he's been fantastic, especially with his usage. I think his usage is about 15.7. And you've got guys like Siakam, you've got guys like Barnes, FVV. They need the ball a lot in their hands. He's the perfect foil. He's the glue guy we desperately needed. And he creates gravity without the ball. And that's something that we haven't had before. He also creates multiple points of gravity through his actions. You're getting guys running off the ball, movement. It changes with him being on there. Even yesterday, we saw a situation where every play seemed to be coming out of pick and roll because it was dead, and he just decided, this is what I'm going to do, and I'm going to move in here, and you guys are going to have to play around it, which is everything we needed from him so far and more. I don't think he was given enough credit at San Antonio for his impact offensively. I think if you look at his numbers of the prior years to this year, they were all expected wins were all in the 20s. One of the things I was skeptical about for this trade was he was taking over that connecting role that Scotty was just doing so well at. Instead of sitting in the corners, he was part of the team the whole time. He was active. He was initiating a lot of the actions. That's my one thing. I'd like to get Scotty more involved. He does have an ability to wait in the background a bit too much for me. But Poeltl has just done what Scotty was doing at a way higher rate. So from that point of view, it's been okay.
I'm not even I don't see them as you feed one and you have to starve the other. I don't see them as a mutually exclusive option, really. But what I mean, you kind of mentioned it there. But by the way, gravity is a really nice way to put it, because I think he does shift the defense a little bit more. But you hit the nail on the head there with the pick and roll, which I've been talking about for about a few months now, how the Raptors just are not very good at running the pick and roll, and he's brought that element to the roster. And I think last night, we're recording this on Friday, last night against the Pelicans, you also saw his impact on the offensive glass. Were key rebounds that he got off of, I think, Siakam misses or some threes that were missed that he put, he was there contesting for it. He had the experience to kind of time his jumps properly, and he made a massive impact against a very, very good Pelicans team. So I think the gravity aspect for sure, definitely shifting the defense, the pick and roll aspect for sure. And also, he's not, I'm not saying he moves amazingly without the ball, but he does present himself. Whenever you see the offense sort of dry down a little bit or slow down, or maybe the ball is getting stuck with Scotty, Poeltl is not a let me just watch the play type of guy. He will get involved in the play, and he knows, but just because I think his San Antonio training, like he knows when to sort of cut. Yesterday, in the fourth quarter, I think there was this one play where Scotty was kind of, he had the ball on the left side of the court, and the play was kind of going nowhere. But him and Pirtle combined, and he hit him with like a nice bounce pass. And Pirtle, who reminds me a little bit of Kevin Willis in terms of his finishing, because he will use the hook shot even when a hook shot is not needed. He's so trained to use the little hook that he's so comfortable with it that he uses it a lot. So I totally see Scotty and him playing well together. I think last night in the fourth quarter we saw a bit of that.
Yeah, he doesn't need the ball, and that's the key, right? He can do things that others don't do on the court. He moves on the court to the best spot, and he creates situations that we haven't got those guys out there right now. It's not like we have a guy like, so for instance, OG. I like to see him cut more, do that 45-degree cut, get inside the paint, do a lot of things that where we are setting him up for, as opposed to him trying to create on his own. He allows that to happen, Jakob.
Yeah. And I think we were kind of spoiled with Gasol here those couple of years, right? When he had the ball in the high post, and he sort of motivated guys to cut. When you don't have a big man or a guy who will find you on the cut, you sort of lose motivation to cut. You sort of you go to what you're comfortable with, and everybody's comfortable parking on the 3-point line, which is what the Raptors really end up doing. So Pirtle, just having knowing that you have a guy who will find you if you cut, or at least will try to find you, does motivate you to move without the ball. And I think we're seeing that as well. But at the end of the day, how simple is basketball that you introduce one player, not even like an all-star level player, or just one good piece, and he makes the entire system better, right? It's amazing.
But at the same time, how many people can do that? How many players can create that multiplier effect? There's not many, right? And we've seen that now. So many other centers that we've tried to play. He fits the system. He understands how to move off the ball. Thanks to San Antonio, that training is, and he has transformed his game from what I remember of it. I just remember a little pogo stick that used to kind of blow his offensive side, but defensive side, he was very, very good. All of a sudden, he knows how he has that old man ability to read the play before it happens and be in the right spot. And his footwork now, it's almost ballet-like. He's just one or two steps and he's in the right spot. Very simple, very easy game that has huge effects all around.
Yeah, and I like that he keeps it simple. You're not going to see him try to take a fade, or he's not going to try like a Kareem hook shot, or he's not going to do things that he knows he's not very good at. Because in San Antonio, you get drilled efficiency, you get drilled playing the right way. So you're not going to take a half-baked shot, which the coach will say, "Hey, that's clearly a bad shot." I mean, in the games that I've seen him play so far, I don't think he's taken a bad shot. I think everything he's done has been sort of within the confines of this. I'm not counting like the.
Yeah, I agree. No, I agree 100%. Yeah. But one thing, how ugly is that shot, though, buddy? I look at that shot, I want to close my eyes every time.
The hook?
No, that little push shot, especially on the free throws. Oh my God, what is that?
Yeah, I mean it is, but the percentages are okay.
Oh, absolutely, I agree.
And it's not like he takes a lot of like jumpers, so it never really comes into play a lot. He does more or less finish around the rim, but I did observe that he uses the hook shot even when there's no need for the hook shot, which is a bit odd.
He's you know what? It's amazing. It's been amazing. We all knew we needed a center, right? We all knew that was the case, but to have a center who's performed and taken this team to the level it has. It's like, do you remember those early numbers we got from Koloko first couple of weeks and how he transformed the defense? He's taken that promise and he's made it sustainable. Or it seems to be sustainable. That promise is there.
Yeah, I think so. And I think as for like when we realized we needed a center, I think maybe probably 2 months into the season, it became sort of obvious that we can't really win playoff games with this roster. It would take like a Herculean effort from many players to overcome the lack of rebounding and defense. So I think we've covered Pirtle enough. I think next up is Scotty. So he's a guy that I know you've been you want a lot of things from him. I think generally speaking, a lot of people, especially the wrap up show guys, have been a little critical of his defense this season. When they mentioned it, I started paying a little bit more attention to his defense, and I did notice that he does. He's not always committed to the defensive side. I feel that could be for many reasons, but I know you feel like that he's coming on strong these days.
Well, I feel like with him, it's that chaos that he creates. He needs to be with this environment with Pirtle, especially, who has that. He has the ability to create a very solid foundation for any defense. Now, with his craziness out there, it can happen. He can do those little things. He kind of reminds me of like Tony Allen back in the day from Memphis. When he was just doing all kinds of crazy things and drawing the defense this way and that. Scotty has that ability to not be in the right position, but still somehow it can work and it can't work. It can go both ways against you. That's the problem. But I think now in this scenario with Pirtle, I think it's fixed. Or fixed, we're more able to function.
Yeah, I mean, Scotty to me is a wild card, right? I think we're seeing a player who is finding his spot in the NBA. He's kind of like jack of all trades, king of none right now, which is kind of how I want a rookie to be. Like, I don't want a rookie to kind of settle in and say, this is my role now. Like, I think Scotty is in the exploration stage of his career where he's trying to figure out what his gaps are, what his strengths are. And, it's a year and a half in the NBA. That's not a whole lot of time. So when I see Scotty kind of like run, he reminds me of a quarterback who has where the defense is rushing him and he's out of pocket and he's got to do something.
That's a great point.
That's basically how I see Scotty on like a lot of possessions, including last night. And he tends in those situations to make the right decision. It's not like he's turning the ball over a lot.
No.
My issues with Scotty have mostly been on the defensive side, not offensively. I think offensively he's done well to sort of relieve Siakam from his playmaking responsibilities when he's got to. I think his post-up game is great. His face-up game has been amazing. I don't think he's scared of taking anyone down into the post. I don't think he has a fear factor in him at all, which is what you love in a rookie. So Scotty, man, like this is like he's absorbing things, and like this season we're not going to win titles this year. So this year, as I said at the start of the year, is going to be a development year, and I think Scotty is developing as per plan. My only beef with him is that he does take defensive possessions off. And I know last time I mentioned this, people were like, well, everybody takes defensive possessions off. Well, that's not a strong counter argument to Scotty.
I think you can say a lot about his mastery of his skills, but I don't think you can ever question his ability to affect winning. He has that specialness that he can turn a situation around in 5 minutes by just taking control. And that's a very, very unusual thing. It's kind of Vince-like back in the day. That's a guy who I remember having that energy to create that moment to make it his. And he has that. And that's the real exciting part for me. I think once he figures out who he is as a player, and that's going to take a while, once he sees the court, once he understands what he can do and what he's best at, he is going to be special in my mind.
Yeah, and he does have a tendency to surprise people. Still, people are genuinely like a little, because I've gone back to. By the way, I started this season watching the Raptors broadcast. I switched it back to the other team. I can't.
I'm with you, especially that. You know what I love? I love the Pelicans team. That broadcast is fantastic. AD over there, he always gives me some insights.
I don't even care who it is, man. It just can't be contact, no calls. I'm tired of the contact, no calls. So that's, I mean, going by what other people's impressions are, and I think the broadcasters of other teams are a decent amount of people.
Barometer, yeah.
A good set of people to get an opinion on. He does surprise people, especially with his face-up game. How quickly he will come up the floor and immediately get into the block and execute a move early in the clock, with less than, with still like 14, 15 on the clock, he will make a move. I think that's Scotty's strength. He takes people by surprise, and he has the skills to finish. And yeah, for this season, I almost have like no complaints with Scotty other than his slight defensive work.
His quickness, that's the surprising part for a guy with that body type to be as quick as he is. You can understand why. He doesn't look like he's that guy who's going to jump at you, but he grabs those rebounds. He's the first to get there. He'll take those big men off the bounce because he can do that. They don't see they're similar size, but the quickness is just on a different level.
What do you think the next step in his offensive development is?
Well, I'd like to see more structure around the offense anyway, to begin with. I'd like to see him coming out of that pick and roll a lot more on both sides, as the roller and as the handler. I like to have. That's where I see him coming further up, is through the pick and roll.
Okay, initiating. So I think that's a nice segue to our next topic, which is Nick Nurse. And when this topic was brought up in our pregame chat, my line was like, "Hey, Nurse, he's kind of doing okay. I guess he can still coach now that he has a center." And you were like, "Well, I think he's regressed." So why don't I give you some space to explain the Nurse regression?
So for me, I think sometimes he gets lost in the trees. As a manager, as an X and O's guy, I can't say anything because he's way beyond my understanding. What I'm really worried about, is he a great manager of people? Does he take the pieces that he has and maximize their effectiveness? Makes the sum greater than the whole. And that's one of the things I always worry about with Nurse. X's and O's, not at all. Managing people, yeah. And I think sometimes he gets lost in that personnel versus philosophy. His philosophy on how to run this team is more important than the pieces that he's playing with. He tries to sometimes put square pegs in the round holes. And that stubbornness is starting to bug me a little bit at times, right? I'd like to see more structure on that offense. I'd like to see a lot more structure on that offense. Our effectiveness on the shooting is just horrible. And we just rely, all 3 points from defense to transition to offense are all energy related. You can't do that and expect to be successful over an 82 game season.
I think every coach is dogmatic to some degree. I think your criticism of Nurse is fair. I could have said that about Dwayne Casey as well. I could have said that about Sam Mitchell as well. I think every coach has sort of like Tom Thibodeau is another guy who has a particular style of playing. You can probably go through all NBA coaches and pick one characteristics that they have that they are kind of sticklers for. And I think that's been a criticism of Nurse. I think Joel Embiid said it, the other day, that he's more concerned with stopping the best player than he's about winning the game, which is, we hate Embiid, but that criticism did ring a little bit. It rang a little true, as much as I don't like him. And they were true words, I felt.
Okay, I got a question though, Zarar. Don't you think that what drew you to Nurse when he first came in was his adaptability to the moment, the ability to create the box and one, the wall, all of those things he's put into play in the moment, and he's made it work. And that, I think, was what I thought was the genius of Nurse. Now I think he's gone from being a tactician to a strategist, and all the tactics are based on that strategy. And I think the strategy may be the fault. If you have a faulty strategy and you're putting in tactics underneath to make that strategy come true, then that's going to be an issue. That's my problem with him. It's just that lack of adaptability that he had prior.
Yeah, I think in this debate, and I've had this a couple times before, like, I'm on the side of there's a lack of personnel for him to coach the way he wants to coach.
Yeah, I agree with that.
And this has been brought up a couple times, and I don't know. I just find myself on the idea of, like, if your bench is Delano Banton and Malachi Flynn, and you don't have a center, I don't care how great your tactics or strategies are, you're not going to win a lot of games. I think at the end of the day, it's about personnel, and I think the Raptors were lacking personnel. And now that you have Poeltl there, I think you're seeing results. So suddenly, the criticisms of Nurse have gone significantly down. Nobody's,
you're winning, right?
Mud at him, and what? He just learned how to coach suddenly? No, he can run the pick and roll now. He has almost like a fallback when the offense doesn't work. So I find myself, like I'm it's difficult for me to criticize Nurse. The one argument that somebody made the other day, which I was like, okay, is that he maybe hasn't tried as many lineup experimentations as people would have liked him to, especially with Malachi Flynn running the point. I think he's been relying very heavily on Fred and Siakam. So I take that as fair criticism of him. But overall, it's just difficult for me to say that he's dropped the ball.
Yeah, again, I really feel like a great manager takes the personnel he has and creates his strategy based on that, rather than taking the big picture. This is what's going to happen, and you've got to do this, and when you can't, and that's been the problem for me.
Man, I think we're doing pretty well on segues, because if you're going to talk about strategy, I will contend that the strategy was imposed on him, not necessarily
interesting. I like it.
Subscribing to it. We'll never know the true answer to that.
That's true. Yeah, absolutely.
But, that's what sports is about. There's always this ambiguity there. But yeah, let's talk about Masai. I know you felt pregame that Masai's maybe is a little too patient. Explain that a little bit.
So I don't know. So okay, the problem with Masai, to say whether he's too patient or not too patient, he's like that Wizard of Oz. He's hidden behind the wall, and you don't even know what's going on. But unlike the Wizard, he's all steak and no sizzle. There's no little gadgets going around there. What he does, he has a reason for. He's very slow. He's very methodical. Sometimes I feel he's a little too worried about the short-term value on deals. Sometimes he can be a little cheap, and that can be a little irritating, because why didn't we get this Pirtle deal done last year? This is always the question that everyone's asking. Maybe there was a pricing involved. I'm not sure. I don't know. But everything comes down to assumptions with Masai, and that's a big issue for me. Like I always make these assumptions, and then I have to worry about, am I making an assumption here? Do you know what I mean? I can see what's in front of me, and I know he can see what's in front of us. But how the reaction is it's within the focus of the strategy. And like you said, he's an extraordinary strategist. I just did a recent piece on Bruno Caboclo. And one of the things I've noticed is that he takes a formula, he takes a situation, and he regurgitates it in slight changes. He makes those evaluations based on what has happened in the past. It's like a case study for him. Everything is a case study. He looks back in the past and tries to see what little tweaks and changes can be made to make everything better going forward.
Yeah, I think I can take a stab at answering the question on why the Pirtle trade wasn't made last year. I think they were legitimately trying to figure out if they can build a team without a traditional center. And I think they needed to give some space and time to get the data on that little experiment out. And I think last year, I didn't necessarily see last year as a hugely successful year like many people did. I thought the Phillies sweep, which was heading down to a sweep until the last two games, was an okay performance. But I went into last season knowing that it was a rebuilding year, and it sort of met my expectations. But I didn't think we had collected enough data last year to say that we can build or not build a team without a center in there. So I kind of excused Masai for heading into this season with a flimsy situation at center. And I'd like to give him a little bit of credit. There's a lot of people who are dogmatic and who might have still said, let me stick to what I'm doing. This is right, and kind of like force the issue. And to see him pivot and change his mind midway through the season and pull a deal and give up a first-round pick for near-term value, I think that shows adaptability. And you talked about Nurse's adaptability earlier. So I think if you appreciate that adaptability, you have to appreciate Masai's adaptability to this situation.
Well, I think your premise is wrong. That's why. I think he always wanted a center. He just didn't have the right center. We tried a couple of centers, right? Baines, we tried Lenz, we tried a couple of things. He was always talking about Pirtle. So I think he always wanted a center. He just didn't have the right center. So to me, that's why I don't think your argument is correct. But since you are the godfather, I will gladly take it, my friend.
No, so then our next topic doesn't really make sense, because our next topic is this the end of Vision 6-9? So if he always wanted a big man in there, then you can argue that, well, there was never a thing called a Vision 6-9, and it was all just media hype.
At no point did he ever say that. This is the thing about Vision 6-9. Did he ever call it a Vision 6-9? He said he wanted length, he wanted size across the board at the back, and he was in that U.S. Tryout where he put Kevin Durant and a bunch of guys across, and they all put their arms across, and he said, "How are you going to get through this?" Right? So I don't know where Vision 6-9 came from. I think the idea of length and mobility, yes, I think that's his idea. But he's also said there's a lot of places for people of different sizes out there as well. And if you're going to have size, if length and mobility is your thing, then a center at 7 foot with even more length, who's almost as mobile, can cover just as much space, if not more. That's so to me, I think Vision 6-9 is one of those Rorschach things where you take it as you want to take it. What happened is up to you.
Yeah. So this story, we had this debate in the Raptors Republic Discord, I think, and somebody asked this exact same question: is like, where does the Vision 6-9 come from? And it actually comes from this article that's on the that I'll post as
actually, I was the one asking that question.
It was you who was asking. Okay, so then you got your answer. So there was a stated, Vision 6-9 comment made by Masai, where he did express how maybe the new NBA, or at least he wants to try something where there's a lot of length on the score on the court. But you're right. I don't think he ever said, "I don't want a center."
Yeah. Yes,
we
exactly. That's the thing.
Extrapolated the Vision 6-9 into no center because
we didn't have one. Yeah, and I'll tell you something. One of the things, my biggest issue with playing that no donut defense is that puts so much pressure coming. We're how many threes did we give up? I hope that we're going to give up a lot less threes now, that we don't have to bring from both sides, so we can play the low man instead, right? And with just one guy coming over instead of giving up that short corner three that we were giving up before.
Yeah, and also, like, people who were there was a few comments I heard about. The Raptors don't like to sag on defense, and with Pirtle, they're forced to sag because he can't really defend the perimeter. Well, I don't know. It's an argument that I've heard, is that the Raptors don't like to sack. Pirtle is a big man; he has to sack. So what? Like, am I the only one who's like there's a big so what element here? Like, I think we're sort of overstating Pirtle's defensive liabilities, and I find it extremely odd that we're talking about Pirtle's defensive liabilities when we're a very poor defensive team without Pirtle. So what are we even complaining about when we're saying that we have to adjust how we play defense?
So I think to a certain extent, I understand what they're saying is that maybe not so high, because he is not able to deal 100% with a guy who can beat him off the dribble and recover. But as he said in that press conference yesterday, as long he's out of position, he knows he's out of position, but that's his job. And he also knows that the job of his teammates is to cover for him. So he has to trust in that. And maybe it's defensively, it's a different scenario than it used to be for him in San Antonio, where they're very defensive or they're very conservative in their defense. It's a much more aggressive scenario. But can he play? Yeah, I trust in him to do. He's a very, very smart guy and very capable.
Yeah. So, I mean, I guess the answer to, is this the end of Vision 6-9, was that, well, Vision 6-9 was a phantom idea by the fans. I don't know. I don't know if that's a satisfying.
Yeah, I don't know what that Vision 6-9 was. Is it the end of it? No, I think it's maybe the vision. Whatever it's going to be is fantastic. Is better this way than it was before.
Whatever it is, I think what it got us is it allowed us to see Pascal Siakam play make a lot. And I think over the last year and a half, Siakam has developed his court vision and playmaking tremendously. Fantastic. I think he's 100% better passer than he was a year and a half ago. So if that's the outcome that comes out of this, I think even that sort of is worth it, because it's not like last season or this season we were actually on a on a contention path. So I'll take the Vision 6-9 learnings and move forward. And man, another segue. We talked about cores, and is this team a championship core? Do we have a championship core? Is the question. Well, first I'll let you answer that. But first, before you do that, what is the core, and do you think whatever a championship core
Yeah,
means?
that's a great point too.
Can you take this roster and add in a couple of more Pirtle type pieces with Pascal Siakam still the best player on the team, with Fred VanVleet still the second best player on the team, and Scotty Barnes, whatever, is this core capable with a couple of more additions at the Pirtle level be able to compete for a title?
So, did you see that at the video today from Coach Casey on what happened on their championship run? And one of the things that we learned from that championship run is that you need one. We've got a lot of very good pieces. We don't have a great piece, not yet. Maybe Scotty can be. I find it hard for. Sorry,
you don't think Pascal's that piece?
Not yet. I think he'd be a great 1B. I don't think he's a 1A at this point. What are you thinking?
Yeah, I mean, I took issue with Sahal the other day dropping the word superstar on Pascal Siakam. I think Pascal Siakam is a star. I think he's a very good player. He is, I hate to sound like the old guy, but he sort of reminds me of Chris Bosh. He reminds me of the Chris Bosh era, where you have one very, very good player, and we're trying to build around him, and we're kind of hitting some walls. It's not a criticism of Siakam. I like Siakam. He's my son's favorite player. So kudos to Siakam. But I sort of agree with you. I think this question can be translated to: can the Raptors win a title with Pascal Siakam as their best player?
Yeah, it kind of reminds me of our situation before with Lowry and DeMar. We really are in that scenario right now, where we've got some really nice pieces. We just don't have that great piece. And, Siakam has said that he wants to be a top 5 player, but he's not at this point. And if he becomes a top 5 player, then that's a whole different formula, right? But he's not.
Yeah, and also I think if you look at from the asset perspective, I know we have some free agents coming up, but there's always sign and trades we can make. Our asset base is quite strong. Like if you look at the Raptors roster, top to down, I mean, they have desirable players, Gary Trent, Fred VanVleet, and people saying who's going to want Fred Van. There's going to be plenty of suitors for Fred VanVleet if this Raptors decide to move in an SNT or something like that. Well, I haven't looked at the cap situations of teams, so don't hold me to that. But Fred VanVleet is a desirable player. Just because we have problems with him doesn't mean other teams necessarily will have the same issues. So the asset base is nice. We've waited, 4 years for a Kawhi type trade. I think we're accumulating a lot of assets. Could this be the summer where we parlay this into something big? I don't know, but I do know our asset base isn't too shabby.
Would you have done that Kevin Durant trade?
Sorry?
Would you have done that rumored Kevin Durant trade in the summer? If Kevin Durant was available, would you have given up Scotty Barnes, let's say an OG, and a couple of other pieces for him?
No, I wrote a piece about this at the time. And the guy that I refused to part in that trade was Scotty Barnes. And, you could make the argument that, well, could you have given Scotty Barnes up, paired Siakam and Durant, and would that have gotten you out of the East? I'm not so sure about that. I really am not so sure about that. I think this team needed more than that. And you saw, Kevin Durant in Brooklyn, you could say he arguably had better players than what the Raptors have on the Brooklyn roster. And that didn't go anywhere. So even in hindsight, I don't think I would make that move.
Durant asked for Siakam specifically to the Nets when Kyrie left, right? So there is something between the two of them. Sometimes I think we get so emotionally attached to a player of our own that we forget what their real value is. I'm one of those guys who believe a bird in the hand is better than two in the bush. I'll take what's in front of me. If I could have Durant I hate to say this, but I would have given it to Scotty. Don't kill me. Don't kill me. Don't at me on this one, boys.
I'm not there yet. I'm not, because I'm just thinking more than 1 year. And Durant, other than Golden State, has sort of struggled with teams he's gone to, and as much as phenomenal as a player he is, I do think I do see. I'm not going to be a Raptor fan for 1 year. I'm going to be a Raptor fan for like the rest of my life. So I got to look at a little broader outlook, and I like what I see in Scotty. I'm okay with being patient. Like, I've been patient since the championship year. I've always said, man, you win a title, the GM, the management gets 5 years to do whatever the hell they want to do. Free pass. Right? You want to do what you got to do. You want to lose? That's cool, because you gave us a title. You get free 5 years, and they have one more year after this one. So even next year, I'm totally good with whatever.
You're a very kind man. You're a very kind. I'm not so kind. I want something now, buddy. I want it now. But look at Kawhi. He was a 1 year thing at the end of the day, right? He got that when it was that 1 year we knew it was going to be, and it happened, something magical. Whether, it's variance or whatever, maybe we got very, very lucky. But I want that championship back.
Yeah. Okay, so let's move on to our I think our final topic, which is summertime options. I think the rest of the season. Oh, by the way, let me just quickly ask you: the Raptors making the playoffs?
Well, by playoffs, do you mean the sixth spot? I doubt.
No. I mean, whether they make the play-in.
Yeah. Then yes. Then yes.
Make the play-in and then win the play-in and go into the playoffs proper into a 7-game series. I believe so too.
I don't. The way they're playing right now, actually. You know what? Can we just segue for a second back? One of the things in the last 4 or 5 games is our inability to score and to close out. We've had a lot of very tight games where for some reason, the other team seems to be scoring really well at the end, the last 2 or 3 minutes, and we seem not to be able to. What do you think the reason for that is?
I think our defense has been porous for quite some time now. I think it starts with giving up dribble penetration. I think you saw with McCollum yesterday, and I know McCollum's a very good player, so not stopping CJ McCollum is not necessarily doesn't speak poorly of your defense overall. But as a trend, the Raptors give up a lot of dribble penetration, and that is a byproduct of having a lot of tall, lanky guys on the perimeter. I think that is a big thing. We give up a lot of offensive rebounds. That's a problem. So, yeah, I think those are, basketball is not that complicated of a sport. You give up dribble penetration, you put yourself in very vulnerable positions. And you obviously you open up yourself to offensive rebounds. So it's nothing surprising for me, because our defense has been poor for so long that I can't really point out to one particular stretch and say that's why the defense is poor. They've just been bad for a couple of years now. I remember last year the problem was overcommitment and closing out too hard on the 3-point line. This year it's more dribble penetration. So there's always like some massive leaky hole in this bucket, and I think in the championship year, that was nicely concealed by Kawhi at the wing, but also some very, very strong big men who could repel some of these attackers. We haven't had that. Poeltl is not really a great defensive center. Even though he had an amazing block yesterday, and he does contend some. He had 6 blocks in one game, so he's definitely surprised me with how good he has been defensively. So I'm hoping he keeps that up, and the Raptors see the effects of that on the defensive side.
Okay. Yeah.
Okay, so let's round off with summertime options. Summer's around the corner. I read an article today on some website that they said the sun will not set down before 6 p.m. for the next 8 months. So celebrate that. So in within those 8 months, while the sun is setting after 6 o'clock, it's going to be free agency time. Do you have any particular ideas or any targets that you've identified that you're like, the Raptors could make a play for something like that?
So I want us to have what we have and take it to another. We haven't had enough time together. It's like parting is such sweet sorrow, my friend. I'm not leaving you. Okay, I'd like to see these guys have a year together and then make that choice. And as you said, as they play better, their asset value gets better too. If we really want something to happen, we're going to have to make our players even more attractive so we can grab that spot, or we get that development internally that we have a guy who's a top 5 player, a top 10 player, right? Siakam's there, a top 15, top 20, depending where he is at that moment. But that real difference maker, that great one, somehow we have to get him.
Yeah. Well, there's if you look at the free agency market, I got this, I'm on Sport Track right now, and there's a couple of guard options, and I know a lot of Raptor fans want guards, and these are kind of like wish lists. But Middleton's has a player option, a very lucrative player option. I don't know what the Raptors' interest there might be. Probably not achievable. Kyrie's out there. He's an unrestricted free agent. Any interest in a big move like that, or are you looking at something a little bit more nuanced?
No, I think at this point we need to get what we have and understand it better to evaluate it. We don't have that right now. And you know what? We're adding another factor. There's so many different players that we could add in there, but then there's always what are we willing to give up for it too, right? At this point, I just want to keep it simple, just move forward, slow and steady wins the race, right? And I think if we can somehow get all of these guys in free agency that we have and sign them up, I don't know how we're going to do that. Maybe get rid of Malachi, maybe get a couple of other pieces. We can take the same group, give it one more year. That's what I want from this summer.
I'll give you one free agent, which I think, again, we're probably not going to get him, but Christian Wood.
I'm not a fan. I'm not a fan.
Not a fan?
I think offensively great. Defensively, you know what? It's a liability, right? Yeah. I know some people don't care about that, which I understand. We should, but I don't want him.
He's won me over this year.
Yeah, he's been fantastic. He has been fantastic in Dallas, right? No doubt about it. He's been those two have been together fantastic, Luka and him. But again, I can you imagine Nurse playing Christian Wood? Could you imagine the fireworks that would go off there? Forget it. There would be a locker room tantrums every day.
Yeah, I mean, I can see that too. But we should give a little bit of love to one of our resurgent power forwards, Chris Boucher, who's back into the mix after a rough stretch there. So kudos to that guy. I mean, unbelievably beautiful dunk. Our Instagram. If you look at the Raptors World Instagram, they posted a comparison of that and the Jordan 88 dunk from the free throw line. I mean, I know it sounds stupidly. It's like, why are you comparing Michael Jordan to friggin', Chris Boucher? But if you go frame by frame on that dunk, I'm sure you'll find a frame in the Chris Boucher dunk, which is somewhat similar to the Jordan dunk at some point. So I'm gonna let that comparison stand.
His aesthetics were beautiful. It was just a moment. It was a moment. Yeah. Absolutely breathtaking.
Well, Nigel, I think we've hit the 43-minute mark here, and it's been great to bring the show back and rebranded as Rundown. So, it was nice talking to you, man, and thank you for coming on.
Oh, hey, listen, I love it, buddy. Thank you so much for having me. I know that there was a lot of people wanting to be on this show, and you asked me, so I really, really appreciate that. Thank you so much.